Alrighty, guys. Welcome this week's Chalk Talk. These are going to keep going, obviously, throughout the season. But we're starting, based off the practices we've had the last couple, we're starting to get to a point where we're beginning to feel more comfortable. And I told the team last night, I really think this team is like really capable of doing some special things this season. So I'm really excited for that. I'm excited to keep going. But part of the reason that I'm doing this is not only for us to be better as just us, but for us to be better athletes and football players in general. And one of the biggest things about football is football IQ. So this is going to be the defensive video for this week, and we're really going to break down a formation that we do, but a overall concept and scheme for defensive football in general that gets ran on every level. High school, college, NFL. This gets ran in every level of sports. In fact, there are teams in the NFL, and it's changing now because it used to just be what kind of a version of what we do, and now they call it an NFT or an NTT, non-traditional Tampa 2. I know some of you are Vikings fans. If you watch the Vikings defense, they are really big utilizers of the non-traditional Tampa 2, where they run a Tampa 2, a pseudo Tampa 2, but they send a lot of blitzes out of it. And ours is kind of a mixture. I would say ours is a non-traditional Tampa 2, but again, it's been modified for the youth game. So we're just going to call it a Tampa 2, right? We're going to look, today what we're looking at is we're looking at the Tampa 2, we're looking at Tampa, and we're going to look at the strengths and weaknesses. And I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break down the strengths and why it's strong. I'm going to break down the weaknesses and why it's weak. And hopefully by the end of this video, for those of you who watch it, you have an understanding of how we play Tampa, why we play Tampa, what it's good at, what it's bad at. Because if you have that knowledge, when you're out on the field, you know where you're vulnerable. And it's just really good football IQ to have. And I want to help y'all develop your minds as football players just as much as I want to get you out on the field developing your bodies for us this year. I would much rather send the next several years of kids who end up, I've been here for 3 years. So the first team that I was with is now in 7th grade. So they have one more year before they're at the high school level. So I'm really, I'm excited to see, and I hope that the knowledge that we're imparting kind of translates up the line. So let's look at the Tampa. One of the reasons ours is a non-traditional Tampa 2, because technically in a traditional Tampa 2, these corners would be in a zone back here, right? They'd also be in a zone in a traditional Tampa 2. But we don't run the traditional Tampa 2. We run a modified Tampa 2, as I said in our Tampa video. So our corners are always going to be man up with whoever there is. If there's nobody there, obviously you're going to creep and blitz. Let's kind of go over the strengths of Tampa 2 or the NTT Tampa 2 or our Tampa formation, kind of the strengths. So one of the biggest strengths and I'll use a different color for this. I'll use blue. Blue will be good. So for strengths, our first strength for the Tampa 2, I call BDB. Okay? If you ever hear me say BDB, that bend, don't break. This is a really good formation for that. Basically what bend, don't break means, guys, is it's okay to give up 2 or 3 yards. It's okay if they have a positive play. You're not going to be able to hold every team in this league to 0 yards. You're just not. It's not realistic. You're not going to be able to hold every team on every drive, right? It's okay to give up little yards, 1 yard, 2 yard, 3 yards. It's when you get 4 and above where it's like, okay, but even then, a 5-yard gain is a 5-yard gain. We line back up and we go again, right? Bend, don't break means it's okay to give up 3 yards. Don't give up a big chunk play, right? Because if you think about it, football is a game of inches. You have 4 downs to get 10 yards on the field, right? That's a first down. You have 4 plays to get 10 yards. If they get 2 yards on first down, 2 yards on second down. They have to get 6 yards on third down, or they have to punt or go for it on fourth down. It's okay to bend and give up 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards to force fourth down. It's okay to give up 3, 2. Like, it's okay to give up those little amounts versus they get a 25-yard play, then a 35-yard play. That's 60 yards down the field. They've already made it. Now they're in scoring position, and now we're in a spot, right? So one of the strengths of the Tampa 2, or one of the strengths of Tampa, is it allows us to focus on bending and not breaking, because in order for them to play into Tampa, right, this is another huge strength of the Tampa 2, is the offense. This forces the offense to not look for big shots, right? No shots, right? This forces the offense to not look for big shots because we have all of the big shots covered. It forces them to play short. And in this variation, in our Tampa variation, we kind of have all the short stuff covered too. So they have to find a way to play into what we're giving them. And when we run Tampa correctly, we're not giving them that much, right? Because if you think about it, right, this receiver, right, he can run a route, but he's manned up. But realistically, where is his safety, right? Where... And this is the same on the other side, but let's really analyze it for a second, guys. Okay. Obviously, he's manned up. But where can he go? Where can he go that he has, where he is strong? Where can that receiver go? What play can be called where that receiver gets what he wants? And let's be real, there are a couple of different options, okay? If you look at the coverages, anything that he does that comes back here, like a bubble screen, right? Any sort of like step screen, any sort of RPO that has a stutter, any sort of bubble, like I said, a stutter. Technically, any sort of route that doesn't go into the deep but goes out. So if he runs an out route, if he runs a whip, technically, that would be problematic. If he ran a corner, like a short corner where his whole goal was to get behind and then snap it off here before he enters that zone. But we are technically limiting that because he has to either play in his backfield, which we're limiting yardage, or he has to play to the boundary. He has to play to the sideline because everything else, deep is covered over the top by the safety. This short area, technically speaking, really, they could try to call a slant where he comes up and then he pops across the middle of the field. But the issue with running a slant out of a Tampa look is the Will, who's standing right here, can intercept the ball. He's problematic. And if he does catch the ball right here, Mike takes his head off, or the safety comes down and takes his head off. This is what's considered a hospital ball. Nobody wants to catch this ball right here because it's a collision point where he's going to get popped, and I promise you, nobody wants to catch that ball. They'll hear footsteps and chicken out before they catch it. So the strength is guys, they have to play, they are limited. They are limited with what they can do, right? In corners, if you play correctly, right? If you do your job correctly and don't let him get behind you, you take that corner route out as a possibility as well. So then all he can do is run the bubble, run the little stutter screen, run an out, run a deeper out, run a whip. Like, he has to play to the boundary because you have it covered, right? The other zones, they really can't run a slant across the field, right? Like, they have to play a certain way to beat the coverage that is Tampa. That's the reason we do it. And then the last strength, because it allows us to bend, don't break, and because we're covered from shots, this is huge. This is one of the main reasons we run it so much. Tampa's safe. It's a very safe formation. Like, if you run the Tampa 2 correctly, it's very safe. Again, we're going to go over the weaknesses here in a minute. We're going to go over them. There are weaknesses. But if we're aware of the weaknesses and we know what we're doing, it's not going to catch us as hard, guys, right? So let's really think about it. We just went over what the receivers can do. They really can't do anything except play in the backfield, which is a negative yardage play to start. If we get there in time, that's a negative. We love negatives. Negatives are great. Or they have to play to the boundary short because they can't play to the boundary deep. They can try, but like if the corners play correctly, they really can't, right? This tight end, the tight ends, anyone on the interior, that's going to be who we have to key in on, right? Because there are areas of the field we'll go over in a minute that are exposed. But for the most part, we have everything covered up. Any sort of drag route is covered up. Any sort of in route is covered up. Anything over the middle in this umbrella here is covered up. Everything here is covered up in the passing game specifically. They can't really run to the outside because if they run to the outside, they're met by a linebacker, they're met by a corner, and everybody else flows. So they really don't have an easy path to go to the outside. They can't take big shot plays over unless it's to the boundary. There's a lot going for the Tampa 2. It's one of the reasons that I, as a defensive coordinator, when I was asked to take over coordinating the defense for this team, the Tampa 2 was the first play I drew up, and I modified it. Because in a normal Tampa 2, like I said, these safeties are going to have deeper zones, and this middle linebacker is going to go up further to cover the deep mid of the field. In this league, we're not going to have to worry about the deep mid of the field because we're just not going to have to really worry about that. And if we do, we will modify, because that's another last strength of this, right, is modability. There are things that we can do out of it. But bend, don't break, no shots, safety, and mod. All of these things make the Tampa 2 incredibly strong. All of these make Tampa incredibly strong. These are the core concepts I want you to think about with Tampa, right? If we play it correctly, if y'all know what you're doing, you're eliminating the middle of the field for them to pass the ball. You eliminate deep for them to pass the ball if the corners are playing correctly. All they can do is play in the backfield, right? This guy could come out here and do something, or they could run a Texas route, which is considered an angle. But if you pass it off correctly, that is end zone pass becomes the middle linebacker's job. So that's really not even easy to do. So, like, it's safe. If we do our job, it is very safe. It is a very safe formation. But everything in football has its weaknesses. So let's talk about the weaknesses. Let's talk about the weaknesses of the Tampa 2. The first and one of the biggest weaknesses of the Tampa 2 is going to be if the opposing team runs the ball up the middle of the field. Sorry, I had to take a drink. The middle of the field, because in the Tampa 2, unless I've called bull or rebel or bear, unless I've called something, we're really not sending that much. We're relying on our big boys up front to bring pressure into the backfield. So, if they have a strong up-the-middle run game, let's take a look right here, right? Our gaps. We know our gaps. We've went over them. There is a gap that is open right now where if they exploit it, it's a problem, right? Right here, we have nobody in this B gap. So if the ball gets handed off and he goes up the B gap, there's nobody there really to stop him. So, technically speaking with the Tampa 2, because we're not sending as much, there is a chance, right? And we have to be aware that if a team decides to audible away from going to the edge, right, that we become susceptible to them taking the ball up the middle. And up the middle run game is a weakness of the Tampa 2. That's fine. If they start pounding the ball up the middle, that's fine. We'll switch to Miami. We'll switch to Vegas. We'll switch to Dallas. I have things built into the playbook to counter that, but we need to know why we're having to switch. That knowledge is huge, right? And the reason that it's acceptable, the reason that it is vulnerable to an up-the-middle run attack It's because we're only sending 4. So no matter what, one of these gaps, no matter how we line up, is going to be open. A smart team with a strong running back will play to that, so we'll have to fill that gap, right? Because no matter what, if we're only sending 4, they have more blockers than we have rushers, and a gap gets left open, which makes the Tampa 2 weak to a up-the-middle run game. Now, another weakness to the Tampa 2 is misdirection. And the reason that misdirection is a vulnerability of the Tampa 2, it's a vulnerability of every defense, but one of the main reasons it's a vulnerability to the Tampa 2 is if there's a misdirection, if this guy comes screaming in motion and you decide, or the safety, you decide you're going to go over here and you're going to fall for the motion, you leave your zones open, and now they have a whole half of the field to play with. You cannot fall for the motions. Make the team aware. Call, hey, motion, motion, motion. I want you to yell. I want you to call out the motion, but you can't do it all yourself. Everybody has to do their job and just make everybody else aware. So we're going to have to communicate. That's how we get over the misdirection. Because if we overextend and we move ourselves out of position, we become vulnerable to something on the backside. We can't do that. That's why misdirection is a weakness of the Tampa 2. But if we play smart and use our heads, everybody stays home and does their jobs and just communicates, hey, motion, look over, hey, Mike, motion. If everybody is doing their job and calling out and letting everything be known, we're going to be fine. And then the last weakness, and arguably the biggest weakness of the Tampa 2, right? So if this were high school ball and you were in a film study session, they go over formations, and when you get to the Tampa 2 with a cover 2, this is the biggest weakness of the Tampa 2. Undoubtedly, this is the biggest weakness of the Tampa 2. And it is the seam, right? And what the seam is this area here and here on the field. And the reason that we're susceptible to the seam is because if this quarterback can drop back, let's say that the tight end on this side is running a route and he bends the seam off. If this quarterback can layer the ball, this safety's going to his zone over here. So he's not there. There's nobody there. This middle linebacker's playing here, but do you see how technically as soon as he moves, we become susceptible to a pass right here in this area? If that quarterback can get back and not get pressured and layer that ball in, it gets behind the linebacker and the safety's already extended, right? So the seams become problematic, right? The way that I've coached the last 3 years, the way that I've coached that the seams we've been able to protect our seam is safeties. I don't want you going immediately. I don't want you going out immediately. I want you to start going out, but go out slowly. And then as the ball breaks one direction, that's when you really explode out. So you stay home long enough to make the quarterback think twice about trying to throw the seam ball, right? The other thing that will happen is if that doesn't work and we keep getting hit with the seam, we'll go to a different coverage is what we'll do. But a modification we can make is have these zones from the linebackers go up just a little bit, but then that makes us vulnerable here. So the answer to them attacking the seams is for us to go into a different coverage, which normally is going to be the Miami cloud. So those are the strengths and the weaknesses of the Tampa 2. Our strengths are going to be, it allows us to bend, not break. It allows the offense has to have these long, sustained drives with no big shot plays. They have to be on the field and beat us, right? It's safe, and it allows us to kind of do things. And then its weaknesses, and I want you all to be aware of its weaknesses. Runs up the middle, we're going to be susceptible to, right? Misdirection, we become susceptible to. And we're susceptible to a shot through the seam of the defense. So that's going to be a really in-depth dive of the strengths and weaknesses of Tampa and the Tampa 2. I'm kind of working out the kinks of it. There's a chance that this next week, the defensive video, is actually me showing film, like genuinely doing kind of a film study. I'm still working out the kinks to that. We're going to see if I can get that figured out. If I can get that figured out, that's going to be huge because it's going to allow me to actually like show you moving in film. So we're going to hope and pray for that. But that's going to be the Tampa 2 video. Strengths and weaknesses, a really deep dive into it. I really hope y'all are watching this, and I hope y'all are learning a lot. But as always, that's going to end it for the defense video. Offense video is going to be up later today as well. Coach Duke, out.